rebound. Leonard, the chip in front, and Ovechkin scores again. It's his second. It's a power play goal for Alex Ovechkin, and the 911th of his NHL career. The Capitals blowing the doors off. It's 5-0 Washington.
Wow, that is a warrior call from John Walton. Clearly losing voice, under the weather, whatever it is. I hope you're feeling well, John. And Washington, blew the doors off of the San Jose Sharks last night. 7-1. It is now their fifth straight win. And guess who's atop the Eastern Conference standings? Your Washington Capitals. They've got 36 points. They lead the Metro by 2 points over Carolina, and they've got a 2-point lead over Tampa Bay, who is in first place in the Atlantic. Now, they got a lot of games left. 28 played, so that leaves 54 left.
Something like that,
54, They play 82, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they got a long way to go, but Alex Ovechkin, 2 goals, and Ryan Leonard, the kid, with 2 goals and 2 assists. The Capitals are on a roll, man. They are scoring, they are stopping, and they have started that West Coast swing with wins over LA and San Jose. They play Anaheim on Friday night. You're excited about this, aren't you?
Quite. They're finding their stride, and especially like the Eastern Conference it's at the beginning of the season, it's been really jumbled. Like 1 or 2 points is separated like 2nd and 7th.
Yeah.
So them being able to kind of stack these wins and start breaking away from the pack in a very tight and competitive Eastern Conference, I'm thrilled right now.
Yeah. Good for them. It's a long season, but they finished atop the Metropolitan last year. And I'm looking, by the way, in the Atlantic Division, the 2-time defending Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers are in dead last place. I know they've got injuries. Joe B told us about that last week when he was on, or 2 weeks ago, whenever it was. But the best team, at least when they're healthy, in the Eastern Conference is Florida, and they currently have the worst record with 25 points at 12-12-1. A quick thank you to Aaron in Bethesda. Aaron dropped off a hat for me, and he asked me the following: are you okay with the W, as in for Washington? I've told you this before. I have a few things that have just the W on it. I will not and would never. There is no point in my life from this point forward you could get me to buy anything that has Commanders on it. Just will not do it. It is not something that is even remotely within possibility. I don't care if they were to win 4 straight Super Bowls as the Commanders. I'm never going to buy anything with Commanders on it. It's just the way I feel. This is an emotional thing. We've talked about this for a few years now. It doesn't hit everybody the same way. It hits a lot of us the same way. I'm okay with the W. I'd rather have the old logo back. Obviously, I'd rather have the old name back. I have come to grips with the belief that the old name is gone and is not coming back. I still harbor hope that there will be a change at some point. I think the season the team is having this year, if they had had it last year, we would be in the midst of a change. I'm convinced of it because I know what ownership knows and believes, and that is the current name is not great. It's not a good situation, but they went with it because it was the path of least resistance, and they felt like they could do it after a 12-5 season as the Commanders and 2 road playoff games and nearly a Super Bowl trip. 3-9 last year at this point, the plans are already in place for how they're going to handle the switch to whatever they're going to switch it to. My belief has always been, if Redskins can't happen, give me Washington as the brand, Washington football team, Washington football club, whatever it is, and I'll call them the Skins for the rest of my life, which I'm probably doing anyway. I mean, I refer to them as the Skins all the time. I refer to them as Washington all the time. But Aaron, thank you for this. It's a ski cap, a black ski cap with a big W on it, and I'm okay with it. I've got a couple of things with the W on it, just not Commanders. I mean, let me just make this point too, because a lot of people are steadfast in, why are you giving up? Why aren't you with us, where it's either Redskins and the old logo back or it's nothing? Look, I am with you. I am absolutely with you. I just don't think it's going to happen. I've talked about this many times. The Amazons, Fox, Disney, Anheuser-Busch, name the top 10 sponsors of the NFL. The top 10 that give the majority of what is now a $25 billion top line business. I just don't think they'll allow it. And I think the league understands that. And why won't they allow it? Because they've got to deal with shareholders as publicly traded companies that will push back like they did for all those years when they were promoting the NFL and promoting the Redskins, and they got all that. They had to deal with it just like others had to deal with it, without the understanding of what it really means and what it really means to Native Americans en masse and what the language evolution of the word has come to mean. I've mentioned it, 500 times since 2009, 2010. They should have long ago petitioned the dictionaries for a second, non-pejorative definition. Redskins, noun, the professional football team that plays in Washington, because that's what the word has meant for a half century plus. Nobody, as I've mentioned many times, walks into a restaurant and says there are two Redskins sitting at the bar, and somebody says, oh, two Native Americans sitting at the bar. No one says that. The word hasn't meant that in a half century. It means the professional football team that plays in Washington. The answer would be, oh, is Jaden Daniels one of them? Is Terry McLaurin one of them sitting at the bar? But they didn't choose to do that. I did suggest it. I suggested it to people back in 2009, 2010, 2011, somewhere around there. They had all the answers. That was the regime that had all the answers. Just ask them. And yet they didn't have any answers, of course. But thank you, Aaron. I'm fine with this. It's a little tight. I wear a lot of ski caps, not necessarily. Actually, I do when I'm doing the radio show during the wintertime. But now that the show is being streamed and you can see the hat I am wearing that I walked into this morning, I don't know. I wear typically a baseball cap. Why do I do that? Maybe it's because I'm borderline bald. I don't know why. I like wearing baseball caps casually. We don't do these shows formally. We do them very casually, super casually. But thank you, Aaron, for that. And yes, I will wear things with the W on it. I don't own a lot of stuff. I never owned a lot of Redskins stuff. I always had a lot of Redskins gear in the house for the boys. And in fact, when we moved, I may have mentioned this previously, but when we moved in 2021 to where we live right now, and we were going through boxes and packing stuff up, there were so many jerseys and kids' jerseys, like in a big box.
What was the deepest pull in there?
Interesting, right? So there was no RG3 jersey anywhere.
Okay.
Santana Moss jerseys, there were 289 jerseys. I think my middle son loved Santana Moss.
Good.
And there were two Cooley jerseys. Not several, but two Cooley jerseys. This was long before I got to know Chris and did a show with Chris. But there were 47 jerseys in there. There were, what were the other? I was surprised there was no number 10s, that there was no Griffin. There was no Cousins. No Cousins jersey. I promise. There was no Cousins jersey.
That's even more shocking, but
those were the one. That's what I remember pulling out of there.
All right. Listen, good haul.
Yeah, and there was no 44s or no 9s. Okay. Obviously, Riggins is an all-time great, and I got to know John, still know John. We did a show together, but there were no 44s. It was the two that I remember are Cooley and Santana Moss. And then there were a lot of Redskins, beanies and ski caps and baseball caps and the T-shirts and the whole thing. Lots of that stuff. But a lot of it was just for the kids. I didn't really, I think I had a hat or two.
You gotta keep it tasteful.
I've never been a jersey guy. Just, I'm an adult. Sorry. And I'm not saying that all adults don't wear jerseys. I've never what drives me crazy and has for years is when you walk into a stadium and somebody's wearing 44 with their own name on the back.
The personalized, I could never get behind that. That's
I can't
it's too
do
far.
that. I'm just not look, this overwhelming majority of you are probably jersey people, and it's great. It's fine. I'm not knocking it. I just, for whatever reason, have never felt great about putting on a jersey number and walking into a stadium with it. I mean, this goes back to, well, now when I was a kid and you bought the plastic helmet with the classic Redskins helmet and the classic Redskin jersey. I remember having a 43. I remember having a 9. I remember having a 55. Those are the 3 I remember. Sonny, Larry Brown, Chris Hamburger as a kid. And you got the football pants, you got the jersey, you got the helmet and the shoulder pads and like one big box. I mean, you don't know what I'm talking about, and many don't know what I'm talking about, but many do. Like, you didn't buy jerseys. Jerseys weren't available. You had to buy the jersey through an overall football uniform purchase. Helmet, shoulder pads, pants with pads, and then the jersey as well. And so that's how you got jerseys. Look, I don't know what year wearing NFL jerseys to games became the thing. It was not the thing in the 70s, and I would say it wasn't even the thing through the early to mid-80s. I think it took off after that. I wonder when they started to license the jerseys. They were licensed through these football uniform packs, obviously. As a child of the 70s, as a teenager primarily of the 80s, I remember that. I don't remember being able to purchase your favorite jerseys until the 80s. And even at that point, for whatever reason, I did not go out and buy jerseys. I was a kid.
Weren't coming through the Sears catalog at all?
Number. What?
Weren't coming through the Sears catalog at all?
It probably was through the Sears catalog. They probably sold them through the Sears catalog. You weren't buying them through an NFL catalog. You weren't buying them online. I don't think the NFL put out a clothing or gear catalog in the 70s or 80s. Maybe they did. It's actually an interesting conversation and an interesting topic. Probably not for the show, but if I'm going to do, I want to find out the year that people started to have a desire to wear jerseys and it became a thing and the NFL started to sell their jerseys. And by the way, the players got a cut. They still get a cut. Cooley's, shared with me the entire, model. Cooley still gets something when a 47 jersey is sold. The issue is that they aren't sold as much anymore. But I would say, 26 too. There was a Portis jersey.
These are all very acceptable for my childhood. Yeah. These are the jerseys that I wore.
Portis, Santana, Cooley. Those were the 3.
Strong 3.
Anyway, I'm excited about the NFL tonight. I'm excited about the NFL moving forward. I think that for a lot of fans, not just our fans, I think it's hardcore fans of any team. They obsess 95% about their own team and every drama associated with their own team. And I've always, obviously, because of what I do that, but I also obsess over the league. I love the NFL. I love when the NFL's just on in the house. It is a feeling of fall. It's a feeling of holidays. It's a feeling of winter, into, early February when the Super Bowl is. There's something very comforting. I don't know if everybody feels that way. Probably not. But I think there's something very comforting about football being on this time of year. But I'm into the games. Like when our game's over, yeah, there's, a post-game thing to worry about and there's some work, etc. But I watch everything else. And I think a lot of you do too, but I think there's some that don't. And when your team's out of it in particular, and we've dealt with this a lot over the last 30 some years, when your team's out of it, I mean, do you give up on football? Are you like, yeah, I'm going to watch my team, but I'm not really into watching the Cowboys make a playoff run. I'm not into watching the Eagles to see if they can hang on. I am into that. I think the true reality show that is live sports, it's the best. It is the absolute best. And it's the best when the games mean something. That's why regular season baseball, NBA, hockey, it's hard for me to do. It's not the same level of intensity. It's not the same level of importance. We're into the final 5 weeks of this NFL season, and it's been a wild NFL season. I mean, the standings are upside down. I mean, New England, Denver, Chicago, Carolina. I mean, we can go through the list. I mean, we may end up with an AFC postseason without Kansas City, Baltimore, and maybe even Buffalo. That's insane. And it's compelling at the same time. Like, how real are New England and Denver and Indy? You know, how real are the Bears and maybe even the Panthers at this point? Who's the favorite? It was the Rams last week in terms of who we thought was the best team. I think a lot of people. And then they went and lost to Carolina as a 10-point favorite on the road. I mean, there are probably 20 reasonable Super Bowl matchups at this point. At least 20. And some of them include teams that aren't even in the postseason right now. Like, for me, Houston. Like, I could easily see Houston in the Super Bowl, but they have to qualify for the playoffs first. And they play the Chiefs Sunday night in Arrowhead. The other great part about this, time of year is now you get weather as a factor. There will be a time in the not very far out future where weather is just not going to be an issue because the major majority of stadiums are going to be indoors. I think we're headed towards that day. I think, if you're 30 years old or younger, like Max, you're going to live in a world in which there are no outdoor stadiums in the NFL. They're all brand new, and they're all either retractable or domed or covered. And weather will cease to be an issue, other than maybe getting to the games for fans. But we still have it now, and we've got it this weekend, man. 14 degrees at kickoff at Lambeau on Sunday for arguably the biggest game of the weekend between the Bears and Packers for first place in the NFC North. How about the fact that the Packers and Bears, who are longtime major rivals, that is the rivalry in the NFC North, and it's one of the top 5 rivalries in the NFL. Always has been one of the oldest storied rivalries, Packers-Bears. But you know what hasn't happened a lot during my lifetime anyway? Are Packers-Bears games during regular seasons that mean something. They played that NFC Championship game, at Soldier Field. Aaron Rodgers won it, went on to win the Super Bowl that year. But other than that, there haven't been a lot of seasons in which they've both been good at the same time. We've had that in the NFC East. Washington and Dallas being good at the same time. Washington and the Giants being good at the same time. Cowboys and the Eagles being good at the same time. Cowboys, Giants, Giants, Eagles. But the Bears and Packers as a rivalry, they haven't had a lot of years in which what you're going to get has happened. And what you're going to get is 2 games in 13 days that will likely decide the NFC North title. And it might even decide the 1 seed overall. The Packers play host to the Bears at Lambeau Sunday at 4:25. 14 degrees at kickoff, or falling to 14 degrees. It might be like 17 or 18. No snow, but just frigid. And then on Saturday, December 20th, the nightcap after Washington plays Philadelphia, Soldier Field, Green Bay at Chicago. 2 outdoor heavyweight games in the NFC North. Sunday night at Arrowhead, temperatures in the 20s. No snow as of now for a massive game. And really, it may be a game that the Chiefs have to win just to stay alive. They won't be mathematically eliminated with a loss, I don't think. But a loss that drops them to 6-7, that would be devastating. And at the same time, one of the hottest teams in the NFL, and I think the best defensive team in the NFL, The Houston Texans, they've won 4 in a row. If they go in and shut down Kansas City and walk out of there 8-5, look out. At 1 o'clock, how about the lineup at 1 o'clock? All the while our game's going on. But Ravens Steelers in the first of 2 over the final 5 weeks that will likely decide the AFC North, although Cincinnati's not out of it. Colts Jags for first place in the AFC South. The Colts are really limping here at the end of the season. And then if you think the Bengals at 4-8 with Joe Burrow have a shot, they have to go to Buffalo and win. They're only a 5-point dog on the road. A couple of weeks ago, they would have been a 9-point dog against the Bills. And it starts tonight and ends Monday night with 2 NFC East teams playing massive games. And then the teams they're playing are in massive win or else positions. The Lions tonight, if they drop this one, and they've now lost 4 of their last 7, 3 of their last 5, they're in trouble, man, because the Packers-Bears winner is going to have a sizable lead over the Lions, and they'll be outside looking in as they are right now for the wild card race. Bigger game for Detroit or bigger game for Dallas? Not sure, to be honest with you. They both need it desperately. Now, the Cowboys' schedule softens up after this one, and so 10-6-1 might be good enough if they ran the table, if they lost tonight. Detroit at 7-6, they could run the table theoretically and finish 11-6, and that would look pretty decent. But the Lions are the team not playing well, and they still play the Rams, the Steelers, and the Bears with, the Rams and Bears on the road. And then Monday night, the Eagles, they're not in free fall, not yet, but 2 losses in a row, blowing a 21-0 lead, losing, giving up 281 yards on the ground to Chicago, and they're at the Chargers where Justin Herbert may not play. Broken hand, offhand. That'll be interesting. The Eagles then get Raiders, Washington, Bills, Washington. But don't you kind of feel like the Eagles can't lose 3 in a row? It'll feel like 2023 all over again. And if Dallas wins and Philly loses, Dallas is then, looking at their schedule, looking at Philly's, they're the front runner to win the division. They'd be a half game back. With that tie at 7-5-1, the Eagles would be at 8-5. And yeah, now the Eagles own, no, they don't, they split. I forget what the division records are. Neither team has lost except to each other in the division. No, the Eagles lost to the Giants. So it may come down to that game where they lost to the Giants. Washington is going to be in a really big position as a potential spoiler in the NFC East. Great games the rest of the way. I'm into this. There was a time when my team was out of it where I was just like, damn, this year sucks. I have to say I've been conditioned to move on pretty quickly from a non-playoff season, even early elimination, and still enjoy the rest of the NFL season. And it's a good one, man. You look at the schedule upcoming. I already gave you this weekend. Next weekend, Baltimore at Cincinnati. Imagine the Ravens lose and Cincinnati wins this weekend. That could be big. Chargers, Chiefs. Next week, by the way, a 1 o'clock game. Buffalo, New England, a 1 o'clock game next week. That's crazy. The late games, Green Bay at Denver, Detroit against the Rams. The Sunday night game is not a good one because of one of the teams in it, but I don't think they're going to flex it. They haven't already, and I think they would have had to do it. Minnesota at Dallas. As long as Dallas is in that Sunday night game, it usually works. And then the Steelers play the Dolphins on Monday Night Football the 15th. The Dolphins aren't out of it. We get L.A. Seattle in week 16 on a Thursday night. Amazing. Green Bay, Chicago on that Saturday. There are some really, really compelling games with so many teams and so many unusual teams in the mix. And again, with the Patriots playing big games, with Denver playing big games, with Baltimore and Pittsburgh and Cincinnati playing big games, with Philly playing big games, Chicago, Green Bay playing big games, a lot of outdoor weather games down the stretch that will have meaning. It should be a great finish to the NFL season. And then when we get to the postseason, man, it may be a total feel, crapshoot feel to it. Unlike, in recent years when we've had, Chiefs and even Eagles last year. Although the Eagles were not the 1 seed, the Lions were. We forget what happened to them in the postseason last year. I got a what do you got when we come back? Denton will join us with a college football breakdown. I did read the Mark Schlabach story on Lane Kiffin, and I want to talk a little bit about that when we come back. And then on the show today, you'll hear Steve Suter, part of his film breakdown of the Denver game. Man, he is in love with the way Dan Quinn is calling the defense, and really in love with what Marcus Mariota did after that poor throw early on. Charch will be on the show, and I'll let you know at some point whether or not there's a smell test pick on tonight's Thursday night game. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the Team980.com.
there was something in me. This was really hard. My heart was here. But I just, I talked to some mentors, Coach Carroll, Coach Saban, and especially when Coach Carroll said, man, your dad would tell you to go, man, take the shot, take the shot. You've accomplished a lot here. I always hated how we only gave 1 year to Tennessee and left. I really hated that feeling of that, even though it was an exciting year. But, I think that we gave a lot to this program and to the city, and, some of those historic wins in this stadium we've ever had, and best regular season in the history of the school. So I feel proud of that part, but it just became time, I talked to God and he told me it's time to take a new step. It's a new chapter.
So we talked about this the other day, and I said that, I might be in the minority on this, but if I were an Ole Miss power that be, or even an Ole Miss football fan, I would have wanted Lane Kiffin to coach through the college football playoff. I mean, Ole Miss has never been this close to competing for a national championship. And it's not like he's a CEO coach where it's all about the coordinators. He is the primary reason Ole Miss is 11-1 and on the verge of being a 6 seed in the playoffs. No matter what you think about Lane Kiffin, if you're a football fan, you know how good of a coach he is. You know how good of an offensive mind he is. You know how good of a play caller he is. He ended up with a starting quarterback this year that wasn't necessarily anticipated. And to be honest with you, Chambliss is okay, but there are better quarterbacks out there. And he got this team to 11-1 and a 6 seed. Their chances without him are less than with him. And I just made the case that, look, I would want to go for it. I can hate him when this thing is over, but I don't want to, cut off my nose to spite my face. I've waited my whole lifetime for this opportunity, and now we're going to be diminished in the effort to go win a national championship. However, part of what I said was it would be contingent on the players wanting him to coach. Mark Schlabach, longtime college football reporter for ESPN, and he's done a great job over the years. We've had Mark on the show many times. I actually reached out to him. We'll see if we can get him on tomorrow or early next week. Mark wrote a phenomenal, blow-by-blow story of how this whole thing with Lane Kiffin, LSU, Florida, actually Florida State, was very much a suitor for Lane Kiffin as well. It was a phenomenal story. A lot of Mark's in-depth investigative, talking to sources, stories are always good. And there were some things in there that indicated that for sure the players didn't necessarily want Lane Kiffin back once it was decided that he was leaving. Kiffin, in Schlabach's story, actually encouraged the AD, the school chancellor, and everybody to meet with the team's leadership council because Kiffin wanted to coach. Let me be clear. Kiffin wanted to coach through the playoff. And by the way, people have mentioned this to me. The North Texas coach, the Tulane coach, one of those two teams is going to be in the playoff. They're both staying on to coach their teams, even though they're leaving for new jobs, right? I'm pretty sure that's true, Max.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. And so, but, the idea that Kiffin isn't the most beloved person and is sketchy, let's face it, and a little bit dishonest, disingenuous, a bit of a used car salesman,
weasel,
huckster. Everybody's understood when you hire Lane Kiffin's going to leave at some point. But he had been there for 6 years. And by the way, just let me be clear on something. I don't begrudge him for leaving Ole Miss for a job that's a better job. The LSU job is a better job. I hate the rules that are in place that don't prevent this from happening. He should be coaching and shouldn't be allowed to be tampered with until his season's over. But anyway, Kiffin encouraged Ole Miss, ADs, chancellors, etc., to meet with the team's leadership council because, quote, they weren't going to like what they would hear from the players, meaning the players were going to insist that he stays. But instead, the players told those that met the leadership council that the players were more worried about their position coaches staying versus Kiffin staying, and had grown tired of the drama of the 3 weeks leading into it surrounding Kiffin. The leadership council also met with Kiffin, according to an Ole Miss source. And in response to that meeting, Kiffin said and claimed that the players wanted him to keep coaching them. And a few players pushed back on social media. Bryson Sanders, a center, a member of the leadership council, posted on Twitter, on X, quote, "I think everyone that was in that room would disagree," closed quote. A linebacker, Son Perkins, also a part of the team's leadership council, added on Twitter, "That was not the message you said in the meeting room. Everybody that was in there can vouch on this." So he came into this thing as a huckster, and he left it as a huckster. They met with the leadership council from the team, and what they got from the players is, "No, thank you. Let's move on." So with that, I changed my view. I mean, look, I would still, as a fan, desperately wish that the players wanted him, everybody wanted him, and he wanted to coach. And, 2-3 years from now, we'd look back on the extra 5 weeks that he stayed, and it wouldn't have been as bad as people would have made it out to be in the moment. But if the players didn't want him, then that's different. That would have created a dynamic that would not have been healthy leading into a playoff game on December 20th or December 19th in Oxford. So great story, great read. If you're into this Lane Kiffin story, I suggest it. Mark Schlabach at ESPN.com. We'll talk about these championship games and some of the pending playoff potential controversies coming with our guy Denton next.
All right. Happy Thursday, everybody. We start off in the National Football League. Mark Andrews signs an extension with the Ravens, a 3-year, $39.3 million deal that keeps him in Baltimore for the next 3 years. Isaiah Likely at the end of his contract and potentially a free agent. No doubt Washington will have their eyes on the situation in Baltimore. Plus, NFL teams have announced their Walter Payton Man of the Year nominees. No surprise, but Washington nominates Bobby Wagner for the second year in a row. And the Caps get a big win last night in San Jose by a score of 7-1. Alex Ovechkin and rookie Ryan Leonard with 2 goals apiece, making the Caps the first team in NHL history to get multi-goal games from a player 40 or older and a player 20 or younger in the same game. Tonight, the Wizards, they take on the Celtics over on 106.7 The Fan. Pregame gets going at 6:45. Tip-off slated for 7 p.m. And then right here on the Team 980, we got Thursday Night Football between the Cowboys and Lions. Again, that is right here on the Team 980. Pregame starts at 7:30. Kickoff set for 8:15. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live every day from 10 to 1. You can catch programs like Take Command and Denton's Office throughout all of football season. Don't forget to hit the like button whenever you do decide to join us and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
Pick up your book bags. Grab your notebooks. It's time to go on campus with Denton.
Give me my theme music.
Denton's appearance on this show every Thursday in this time slot to talk some college football this morning is brought to you by IHOP. Introducing the IHOP value menu, where all your breakfast faves are just $6 each every day. Where else can you get a big, filling, sit-down breakfast for only $6? Go to your Happy Plates with the $6 IHOP value menu, available every day at IHOP. $7 in some locations. At the Denton Day on X, on Twitter, the host of college football's many shows on Sirius XM and the host of the Washington Commanders pre- and post-game shows on this station and 106.7 The Fan. I've talked a little bit about Lane Kiffin this week, and I just mentioned the Mark Schlabach story. If you haven't read it, you should read it. It's excellent. It's really detailed in terms of how everything played out going back to the middle of the season. But I don't know what your view was on whether or not, if you were an Ole Miss person, an Ole Miss fan, let's just say a fan, if you would have wanted him to coach through the playoff.
Yeah, I would have. I also would have liked him to stay. You know, it was never going to be a reality that he was going to coach through the playoff while then joining what is technically a rival and joining another school that's inside the conference. Like with these group of 5 guys that are doing so, there's kind of an understanding that, hey, you're leaving. You might take some of our players, but that's not that big of a deal to us because we kind of understand how it works. And you're not going to a rival. So Ole Miss was never going to let him coach through the college football playoff if he was leaving them high and dry for a team that not only did they play this year, they played last year.
Would you, though, as a fan of Ole Miss, would you have wanted him to coach regardless of what maybe some of the risks were?
As a fan, yeah, because I want to win a championship, and he gives you the best option. Regardless of what you feel about him personally, he gives you the best option. He's a dynamic play caller, and he's one of the best in the sport.
Yeah. Anyway, I mean, I was all in on, I would have preferred to have seen him coach this thing out. And if I were an Ole Miss administrator or a fan, I would have said, I'm living in the moment here. And, you know, I'll worry about the risks. By the way, Ole Miss could have gone through the process of hiring a new coach, or having that new coach focus on recruiting, having the new coach sit in on meetings and get to know the players who are getting ready to play the playoff game. I always felt that was overrated, but my assumption was the players wanted him to stay. And the Schlabach story indicates the players had been, at that point, fed up with the whole drama and didn't necessarily want him to stay. How about just the whole Charlie Weiss is going to leave to go to LSU with Kiffin, but he's been brought back to remain the offensive coordinator for the playoff?
Yeah, that's a wrench in the story that I didn't anticipate, you know, because I thought when he left, one, I thought he should leave. I mean, going with Lane Kiffin to LSU, like, look, man, LSU is just a better job than Ole Miss. I don't think we don't have to beat around the bush there. It's just a better job. But the fact that he's allowed to come back, I think that was Ole Miss realizing that we cannot send all of the play callers away. Because, I mean, you know this and they know this. Calling plays is tough, man. And there's not a lot of guys that can do it at a really high level. And, you know, getting to keep Weiss for at least a couple of weeks, you know, I think is going to be very, very helpful. And honestly, I do feel like someone deserves some credit, whether that be Lane Kiffin or LSU, for allowing that to happen. Because my thought on it, Kevin, was always that, like, if I'm LSU, why would I be spending $90 million on a guy to have him not primarily focus on our job for the first month of employment?
They were okay with it. According to the Schlabach story, the LSU people were okay ultimately if he ended up coaching Ole Miss through the playoff, as long as the contract was signed.
Yeah, which is that to me was, because I haven't read the full story, but I read snippets. That to me was the surprising part of it, because I thought for sure they would have been the ones to put their foot down and say, no, we're giving you $90 million. Show up to work here.
All right, before we get to the discussion about what gets unveiled Sunday, before all of the NFL starts with the college football playoff bracket, let's just talk about some of these championship games and the significance of them. Let's leave to the side for a moment, because I want to focus on, you know, how you think the bracket will play out. But, you know, I'm curious as to the motivations of Georgia, Alabama, Indiana, and Ohio State. I mean, Alabama has some motivation, I guess. But the Indiana-Ohio State game, this is number 1 versus number 2. Two undefeated teams, the only 2 undefeated teams. It's a conference championship game. They're both going to be seeded in the top 4 and have first-round byes, regardless of the result.
Yeah.
I'm really intrigued to see this matchup. I think Indiana might be the better team. What do you think?
So I think that Indiana stands a chance. I don't think they're the better team because I think Ohio State's defense is insane. But I do think they have not played an offense like Indiana. And truthfully, I've been very stunned by the line in this one. I thought this was going to be a pretty significant line for Ohio State. And
so did I.
It opened at 5.5, and it seems like it's falling a little bit. I don't have it pulled up in front of me, but I have it. Yeah, it's at 4 right now. I just pulled it up, and that's pretty substantial. And I think that gives Indiana a really good chance because what is lost in a lot of this is that Indiana's defense has also been really impressive. Not quite to the level that Ohio State is because, as we know, Ohio State has some guys on that defense that are, they're top 5 picks, maybe top 3 picks with Downs and Avril Reese. So they got some dudes. But I think you're playing for pride here because you're right. Both teams are going to get a bye. You're playing for pride to win a conference championship, and you're playing for a Heisman Trophy for your quarterback. I think the winner of this game is going to win the Heisman Trophy, whichever quarterback that is. So, I think maybe you're playing more for the Heisman than the conference championship because I think conference championships are on borrowed time in college football. But you're right. Both these teams are getting a bye, so it really is just for the love of the game.
All right, let's talk about what gets unveiled Sunday. Let's start with, and I had Tim Murray on the show yesterday and got his perspective. Obviously, I want yours as well. So, there are a couple of areas of, intrigue. The first of which is if BYU loses to Texas Tech, BYU is out. They're currently 11. They would be in with a win over Texas Tech. They've already played. Texas Tech destroyed BYU, and they're a 12.5, 13-point favorite in the Big 12 championship game tomorrow. If BYU loses, that obviously opens up a spot for either Notre Dame or Miami. Who do you think deserves it, and who do you think gets it?
It's such a complicated answer, and I really want it to happen because I want the committee to shake a little bit in their boots. I love watching them shake in their boots. It should be Miami. It will be Notre Dame. Although I do think that with Bama jumping Notre Dame, they set Notre Dame up to fail. They set them up to fall out of this thing because you can't hide behind the head-to-head now with Miami. If BYU loses, regardless of what the loss is, unless they lose on a buzzer-beating field goal, which is not going to happen. Texas Tech is a legitimate championship contending team. They're going to smash them again. And BYU is going to drop. Well, right now they're the buffer between Notre Dame and Miami. So you have not, if you are the committee, you can say we have not looked at Notre Dame and Miami side by side yet. Well, when BYU loses and it goes Notre Dame at 10, Miami at 11, you then have to look at them side by side, and you have to factor in the head-to-head. And the head-to-head is going to result with Miami being in over Notre Dame. So they set them up. They've been protecting Notre Dame for the first 6 weeks of this process. And then for whatever reason, Alabama beating a not very good Auburn team was enough to jump them over Notre Dame. And Notre Dame's not going to get in. They're not. They set them up for failure with the way they did it this past week.
Interesting. So it really would be a horrible precedent in many ways to take 2 teams for one spot, and the resumes are essentially identical, strength of record, strength of schedule, etc. The records are identical. Neither played in their, Notre Dame doesn't have one. Miami didn't get to play in the ACC championship game, and they played head-to-head, and then to take the team that lost the head-to-head. I think I'm with you. That it will wait a minute. Let me just be clear. You think it's going to be Miami, but you think Notre Dame should be in?
Notre Dame is a better football team right now. I don't
much
think
better football team.
That.
Okay.
Much better
You and I both
team.
liked Miami, remember, early in the year, and I thought they were a national championship contender. Carson Beck in the Louisville game, and by the way, in the SMU game, the overtime pick, essentially lost 2 games by himself. Notre Dame doesn't even need to throw it to be a national championship threat. I think if Notre Dame played Miami right now, Notre Dame would be a touchdown favorite. And to go back to a Labor Day weekend game and say that's going to be the decider, ultimately you're going to, if you don't make it the decider, teams aren't going to play these games, anymore.
Right.
So I guess that's probably the deserving team, Miami, but Notre Dame's the better team, and Notre Dame's the team of the two that would have a chance to win a national championship. You don't think Miami – at one point we both thought they could, but we don't think that anymore, right?
No, I don't think Cristobal – well, first of all, we have not seen a bad Cristobal game yet, which means that they do play another game.
Coming.
One is coming. I mean, we thought – I need to specify this. We thought that Miami was a national championship team because defensively they were really strong and they could really run the ball. So they made it not all on Carson Beck. Well, as they got into the bulk of a very tough, cough, cough, ACC championship schedule, LOL, they started to throw the ball more, and we kind of saw what happened. When you can't run the ball against ACC teams, and it's not like they played gauntlet, and Carson Beck is Carson Beck, you're not a championship level team. At the very least with Notre Dame, they have, who I would argue is at worst the third best football player in the sport right now with Jeremiah Love. So he is good enough. And unlike what Boise State had last year with Ashton Genty, who was awesome, they have enough of a team around Jeremiah Love to justify saying that you can go into a playoff with a running back as your best player and still have a legitimate chance of winning a championship. I do, though, Kevin, think there's an avenue where both Miami and Notre Dame get in, but then that would break the hearts of a lot of Bama fans and set a precedent that we have not seen yet.
Okay, so that's my next place to go. You think then there's a chance if Bama gets blown out in the SEC championship, they could drop out of the playoff?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are taking the approach of, well, they're going to honor the conference championship games. And in fairness, we saw that last year, but we only have 1 year of evidence that that's the case. We can't treat the 12-team format as if we're 10 years into this thing. We're not.
SMU Clemson.
SMU Clemson was the example last year. Now, obviously, Alabama is going to be valued a lot more than an SMU Clemson is. Like, that's just the reality of what it is because that brand is massive. And if they lose by, 4, if they lose by 7, hell, even if they lose by 10, I think they still get in. But if Georgia does to Alabama what they did to Texas, then you're going to start scratching your head because this is not the team that you thought they were. And then at that point, they would have 3 losses, and you might be able to justify Miami and Notre Dame getting in ahead of them. I still would think that they value the conference championship, but I'm not going to use 1 year as an example last year when there weren't other worthy teams of getting in available. Like right now, I think Notre Dame and Miami are both worthy of getting in, to where last year you were looking at a bunch of 3-loss. I mean, hell, even Vanderbilt this year. Last year you were looking at a bunch of 3-loss teams, and SMU and Clemson, or Clemson got the auto bid. SMU was not a 3-loss team. So we don't know what the precedent is, how they judge 3-loss teams compared to 2-loss teams. And then we just don't know if you get blown out in the conference championship game. Like, surely you have to drop a little bit in the rankings, and they're already at 9.
You understand what that would do. Like, if Alabama plays in this SEC championship game, by the way, because they beat Georgia on the road, they're the 1 seed in the SEC title game.
Yeah.
Georgia's the 2 seed. Okay. Yeah. If Bama loses a game in which Oklahoma and Texas A&M are not playing in that game, and they are knocked out, you will see a future in which teams will consider all of the possibilities to opt out of conference championship games if they're already in the playoff.
I don't think that's one avenue. I think there is another avenue to where we go to play-in games. And I think that's a much better philosophy.
Well, you're just expanding the field.
Yeah, you'd expand the field a little bit, probably to 16, and then you could make it work to where, each conference gets a certain amount of auto bids, with the SEC and Big Ten having more. And then you could say, hey, if you're in the SEC championship game, I'll just use them as an example. You're both in, and then it's just seating wise. And then we'll have A&M play, let's just say Vanderbilt, and then Texas and Oklahoma. You win and you're in. And then we can decide at large, maybe 2 at-large bids at the end of that. But I think that's a much more intriguing, and literally all that would do this weekend is add more football games. And I think if you're Vanderbilt, you'd be licking your chops at that, saying, hey, let's settle it on the field. If you're Texas, you're licking your chops saying, yeah, let's settle this on the field and see if we can win our way in. and then maybe Miami would get one of those two. I mean, the ACC is in such a terrible position right now. I can't believe
the ACC's got to fix it where if there's a tie for second place, the highest ranked team's got to play in that championship game. It should be Miami playing Virginia.
It should be. I mean, they're going to if Duke wins, they're not getting a representative. They're not. There's going to be James Madison and whoever wins North Texas and Tulane.
Unless James Madison were to lose.
Yeah, unless Madison loses. Yeah, because Troy's not going to get in. But that's an embarrassment. And then, then if James Madison loses, you're probably looking at like a UNLV and saying, all right, well,
yeah, maybe
see what their schedule and how their resume would stack up.
Yeah, I'm running out of time here, but I want to make sure everybody understands the Alabama conversation. Alabama beat Georgia on the road in the regular season. Alabama is the 1 seed in the SEC championship game. They are the 9 seed right now. They're the 9th ranked team in the playoff rankings. Georgia is 3rd. All right, Georgia has 1 less loss. Their only loss is to Bama. Denton is suggesting that if Alabama gets blown out, they may get blown out of the field. I don't think it can happen because this is a game in which Alabama would rather not play. To be honest with you, if it means that there's a risk of being knocked out of the playoff. I mean, you can't go into these championship games as a playoff team and then get knocked out if you lose when you already beat that team. I don't think it'll happen personally. I think Alabama is going to be in even if they end up getting blown out. But a separate conversation about Bama is this. I don't think they're anywhere near as good as Notre Dame is. I don't think they're right now. I think you can make the case that Miami's better than Bama. Bama was lucky to survive Auburn. They lost to an Oklahoma team that's great on defense but can't score. And they were in a life and death game with LSU for some of that game a few weeks ago. They're not playing their best football. I don't see them as a national championship threat. I see Notre Dame as that. All right, so you already answered the ACC question, of course. If Duke beats Virginia, then JMU and the winner of North Texas Tulane both get in, and Duke as a 5-loss team is not in. We'll see if the ACC is left out of it altogether. That'll be interesting. Real quickly, who do you like in that game, Duke, Virginia?
I like Virginia. These two teams have played already, and
Just
Virginia
recently.
was able to, recently, and Virginia was able to handle Duke. So I like Virginia. I don't think that chaos will ensue.
Be crazy, Virginia. As the ACC champion. I mean, in all honesty, who did they beat this year that's any good and legitimately good? Nobody.
No one.
They didn't play SMU. They didn't play Pitt. They didn't play Miami. These are the unbalanced schedules that are hurting some of these, massive conferences, the top 4 conferences that expanded to, 16 to 20 teams. And when you get these unbalanced schedules, you get a champion like Virginia, all respect to what they've done down there, but they literally beat nobody on their schedule. Nobody.
No.
When Florida State was ranked 10, high, but Florida State ended up with a losing record.
Yeah, they've been a disaster. I mean, they literally broke Florida State, and they've been a disaster ever since.
Yeah. All right. Thanks. I'll talk to you this weekend.
Yep. See ya.
Denton Day, everybody. Back on Sunday for the pregame show. I'll be a part of it before Washington takes on Minnesota. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the Team980.com.
in the opening quarter, you guys passed on the long field goal, 57-yard kick there. Obviously, new kicker, new long snapper. I'm just curious, what went into that specific decision, and have you kind of determined what range you have for Jake Moody at this point?
Yeah, it was definitely the former, not the latter. So it was the snapper new, kicker new, and so I thought this is not the first one I want to try, going into it. So if we could get into that spot, and I liked, this is some field position where we can go. We've got excellent special teams. If we can pin them down, we can go into that spot, and that was the thought going in. There's certain thresholds that we would try in the regular part of the game, and then obviously those extend at the end of the half or the end of the game. So had it been the end of the half, that would have been well within his spots to go.
So yesterday on the show, I read the text that our friend Howard Gutman sent me. Howard, now actually a co-host with his son Colin on a post-game show down in Richmond. But he's the former ambassador to Belgium during the Obama years. He is a Studio 54 original. He has written TV scripts. He's acted. He's one of my favorite people to have conversations with. And Howard texted me and said, I was surprised that you didn't mention what I thought was the most significant decision of the game. And that decision being Quinn punting on 4th and 8 at the Denver 39-yard line on their opening drive of the game, rather than kicking a 56 or 57-yard field goal with new kicker Jake Moody. And Howard said, what an indictment, essentially, on the new kicker, that in today's day, kickers are kicking 56, 57-yarders all the time, especially in close games. And, by the way, you don't punt anymore inside a team's 40-yard line at their 39. You either go for it or you kick a field goal. And I thought about it, and I'm like, I didn't talk about it after the game because I think in the moment I certainly didn't consider it to be the most significant decision of the game, and I still don't. So I think there's a little hyperbole there from Howard. With that said, he isn't wrong about this day and age and the juiced ball. And you get to the other team's 40-yard line, you better walk away bare minimum with an attempt at 3 at a field goal. And they punted. Now, it's not like we haven't seen teams punt this year from the 40-yard line, from the 42, from the 39, 38, but it's much less common this year than it's ever been. So Howard's right about that. In the moment, I remember thinking, is he going to go for it? Is he going to kick a field goal? He decided to punt. It was a cold, windy night. I think they may have been going into the wind. But Quinn told you, first of all, that Jake Moody is capable of kicking a 56 or 57-yard field goal, answering Ben's question. Secondly, by the way, Moody does have a 57-yarder to his credit, kicked a 57-yarder, the longest of his career, during his rookie season in San Francisco. He does have a big leg. He is capable of kicking that. So that's good to know. They didn't replace Matt Gay with Eddie Murray. That reference being, for some of you of a certain age, you remember when Norv Turner at the end of the year brought in Eddie Murray, who was like 46 years old, to kick. And against the Giants late in the season, before Norv got fired, in a 9-7 game, Eddie Murray said, I can't kick it from 46 or further. And Norv sent him out there for a 47-yarder, and it came up 2 yards short. He told Norv, I can't kick it in that direction more than 45 yards. 45 and in, I'm good. Anything further than that, Norv sent him out there for a 47-yarder, and it was 2 yards short. So they didn't add Eddie Murray to the roster. They added a guy with a big leg. You got to have a big leg. You got to be able to get 3 when you get into that 40-yard or inside the opponent's 40-yard line in today's NFL. I agree with Howard on that, but I think there was some wind. I think they viewed Denver as, in the moment, what I was thinking, as not nearly as powerful offensively as all the other teams they had been facing over the last month and a half. And so they punted. Look, the bottom line is they missed maybe on a chance for 3. They also perhaps could have given Denver great field position up 3. So that goes into the thinking as well. But how about his answer? How about Quinn admitting that, A, there was a new snapper, and that was part of the calculus, right? Tyler Ott was sick, inactive. They had a new snapper, and that would have been his first snap of the game. They had a new kicker. And he said, yeah, I just thought this isn't the first one I want them to try from 56, 57 yards out. Look, part of that has to be that the reason Jake Moody is here is because the last guy missed all of his kicks, not all of them, but was a problem from 50 and out. And can you imagine if the first kick from Moody is a 50 and out kick and misses? So some honesty there from the coach. But at the same time, you know, you want a kicker that you have a 10-play, 40-yard drive on your opening drive of the game against one of the top two defenses in the NFL. You know, you're probably not thinking you're going to score a lot of points tonight anyway, and you took away a chance at 3. They need next year, they need that weapon that a lot of teams have. They're hard to find. It's not easy to find. These kickers are not easy to find. The guys that can, a lot of these guys that are really good, let's face it, they're kicking indoors primarily. I'm looking at the longest field goals of the season. Cam Little, 68 yards outdoors. Chase McLaughlin, 65 outdoors. I forget where he kicked it. Brandon Aubrey, 64. Evan McPherson, 63. Look at the kicks this year. Will Reichard, 62. The guy from Green Bay who was kicking for a brief moment, Havrasik, a 61-yarder. Chris Boswell, a 60-yarder. The 59s, there's a list of 5 of them. All different kickers. Butker, Panero, Dicker, Bates, Folk. Lots of 58s and 57s. Matt Gay kicked a 56-yarder. He did kick a 56-yard field goal. What game did he do that in? The Raiders game. He kicked a 56-yarder in the Raiders game. Anyway, a thing to add to the list of off-season needs. They're important now, so important, because field position, field goal attempt, that equation is much different than it used to be, and you've really got to find a guy that can give you 3 if you move the ball from your own 35 after a kickoff that goes into the end zone, and you move that ball, let's say 25 yards to the other team's 40, you want a chance at 3, no doubt. All right, let's get to some NFL power rankings. This is tough, man.
Yeah,
this is really tough.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to count up the teams that are worthy of top 5 positions, okay, New England, Buffalo in the AFC East, nobody in the AFC North. In the AFC South, Jacksonville, Indy, Houston. I would put Houston. Denver, the Chargers, that's 7. The Eagles are 8. The Cowboys aren't top 5 worthy. The Bears are 9. The Packers are 10. The Rams are 11. The Seahawks are 12. 12 teams that could be a top 5 team in anybody's power rankings. I actually have somebody in my power rankings that I didn't even list. I said they're just on the outskirts of it. I've got the Rams, even though they lost to the Panthers at number 1. I still think that they are the best combination of roster, quarterback, and coach. I believe in Matt Stafford. I believe in Sean McVay. I believe in that roster. So the Rams are still overall my number 1. My number 2 is another team in which I believe in the roster, I believe in the coach, and I believe in the quarterback. The Green Bay Packers. I think that win over Detroit was a significant win. I think the Packers, I mean, we've seen them this year. They are awesome defensively. And it really often comes down to whether or not Jordan Love makes a stupid play or not in a game. I think that this game Sunday afternoon at Lambeau is going to be an absolute, so intriguing, so interesting game because of what the Bears did against the Eagles. But I think the Packers are right there with the Rams. In fact, I've been saying Seattle Rams, best 2 NFC teams. I think it's Rams, Green Bay. And I think that I'll take, Jordan Love, Stafford over Darnold And that's the separator for me in the NFC. My number 3 team after Rams 1 and Packers 2. For the first time this year, not only do I have this team in the top 5, but I've bolted them into the top 3. The New England Patriots. Mm-hmm. They are so well coached. I think I read this stat the other day. If I didn't, I should have. Do you know that Josh McDaniel has schemed up the most wide open wide receivers in the league this year? There's a DVOA stat for wide open receivers. They are number 1 in the league by a lot. This is not, by the way, a knock on Drake May, who I love. The dude can flat out do it. It would appear. It's only year 2. They've had an easy schedule. We understand that. But there's something in watching him that just says poised, big and strong, accurate, good deep ball thrower, great touch, and can also create and extend. He's the real deal. He's also supported by the real deal in terms of an OC and receivers like Diggs and Douglas and a back like Henderson. They and the number 1 rush defense in the NFL. Who knew until recently? They're going to be the 1 seed in the AFC. They're probably going to beat Buffalo when they come off this bye week. They'll be at home. They might be favored. They still have the Jets and Dolphins. That means they're winning 13 minimum. That's going to be good, I think, good enough for the 1 seed. And so they're going to be at home, and they're going to have 2 games at home to get to the Super Bowl. I'm not predicting them to go to the Super Bowl, but I am predicting them to be the 1 seed, and I think they're legit well-coached. They've got a quarterback who is playing at a very high level, and their roster, which was a roster that was kind of a mystery before the season started, they spent a lot of money, has turned out to be a pretty good one. They need Will Campbell back at left tackle. New England's 3 for me. Number 4, and I know this is insane, but I've been saying it for 3 weeks running. I think if Houston gets into the playoffs, they've got a chance to go to the Super Bowl. This team is just hellacious defensively. Denver's good, and Denver statistically in some of the advanced numbers probably have an edge over Houston. Watch both teams and tell me which defense is better. Watch Will Anderson. Watch Danielle Hunter. Watch Mario Edwards. Watch their secondary. This team is so good on defense. They went into Indianapolis, a team that has been lighting people up offensively, and they completely shut down the Colts on their home field. I mean, they held Jonathan Taylor to 85 yards. Is that good? Yeah, this year it is. It's really good. This is a dude that's averaging nearly 6 yards per carry. They held him to 4 yards per carry. And you know who looked good in his return? C.J. Stroud. I like Stroud. I think he's good. I think Nico Collins is good. I think the tight end Schultz is good. The running back situation is a little bit in flux because Mark's got hurt, and it doesn't look like Mixon's coming back. So Chubb may end up being the guy. Houston, for me, is the number 4 team in the NFL right now. And then number 5, I put Seattle there just because they're also just hellacious on defense. And even though I don't trust Sam Darnold in a playoff game, they might be playing a couple at home. I mean, this Seattle Rams game on December 18th, Thursday Night Football, it'll probably determine the NFC West champion. The game is in Seattle. Seattle plays at home. They're always so tough to beat at home in the postseason. Seattle is number 5 for me. So Rams, Green Bay, New England, Houston, and Seattle. What do you got?
I'm proud of you for putting Houston on there, but I do not have Houston in my top 5 at the moment. I just got to get them. They got to win a few more games, go on a run. For my power rankings, I think wins have mattered a lot. And just like putting together streaks and how badly you're beating teams. So on that note, number 1 is going to be the New England Patriots. They're just beating they're beating the hell out of their soft schedule, man. I really
They are.
Drake May has looked so good, and like you said with Josh McDaniels, he's schemed up really well. And Demario Douglas, his separation is unbelievable when you look at it this year. So yeah, New England's
He and
gonna
Diggs both among the
just
highest separation rates in the league. But how about that stat? I didn't even know DVOA had it. Somebody sent it to me. They basically break it down by separation. They have a wide open, like it's the most you can get open consistently. New England's number 1 in the league, and it's not even close. That's scheme. It's receivers. It's scheme too.
Yeah, and the route running and the combination of all of it, it's just wow, wow, wow. Sometimes when I'm watching them, and my jaw kind of drops, especially just watching Monday night. Like they just kick the crap out of the Giants. Now it's the Giants, so there is that. But number 2, Los Angeles Rams. That it's an unexpected loss that they suffered to Carolina, but the Panthers have been really Jekyll and Hyde this year. So kind of we'll see if that ultimately matters. Number 3, I got Denver. Tough win for them over us. They're winning tight games, but that defense is still really carrying their team, and I think is what's going to have to show up in the playoffs for it to be long term. You were talking about the Packers. I don't have them on my top 5, but I think that it might be the same picture with them and Denver. They might be just kind of the same team. Just
they
different.
play each other in a few weeks.
I can't wait for it to end in a 13-13
Another one
tie.
of those games here over the last part of the season. They play Denver next weekend in the late afternoon window.
Oh, the NFL did a great job at giving us some good games down the stretch.
Well, you can't really predict it. I mean, they got a lot of big matchups for Kansas City, Buffalo, and Baltimore too. But who thought Green Bay, Denver late in this? I get it. Look, the 2 against the Bears in 13 days, massive games,
nuts. Oh, they're gonna be. I can't wait. I can't wait.
So you got Denver 3, and you've got who 4?
4 is going to be Seattle. Their defense is really good. They run the ball damn well. JSN's electric, but it all is going to come down to Sam Darnold. I kind of feel the same way about Denver, Seattle, Chicago. I just spoiled 5, and Green Bay. It's all going to come down to how well the quarterback plays when the lights are brightest. So with that said, number 5 is going to be Chicago Bears, because I sold them in buy or sell last week because I thought the Eagles were going to come in and kick the crap out of them. But the Bears ran the ball down their throat, and they've won 5 in a row. They look tremendous. The vibes in the locker room. Ben Johnson's ripping his shirt off. They're playing good ball right now, and I got to give them some recognition. So for that, the Bears are going to be at number 5 for me.
All right. I mean, we left some really good teams out of it for sure. But you have the Bears and Denver in there. I have Houston and Green Bay in there. I'm feeling really good about Green Bay. I felt really good about the Rams and even Seattle for a while, but I think Green Bay's that other team in the NFC. I don't trust Philly. I don't trust Dallas. I don't trust Detroit at this point. They may not even get there. And Tampa, nah. All right. Charch next. Charch is with us, as he is every Thursday in this spot. One of the fantasy football experts that everybody knows nationwide. We talk a lot about other things too. And because he's a Minnesota guy, even though he doesn't live in Minnesota anymore, he's a Vikings follower, Vikings fan. We're going to talk some Vikings because Washington plays Minnesota on Sunday in one of the real beautiful stadiums, by the way, in the NFL. I have not been, but everybody that's been says that is one of the best stadiums. I've been to, I went to the Metrodome a couple of times. I was at the Super Bowl where Washington beat Buffalo in January of 92. And I was there the following year. The Redskins beat the Vikings 15-13, 5 Chip Lohmiller field goals. And I was at that game.
Yes. Yeah. Will Miller was a golden gopher. And
he was.
So he got a little, I don't know if you call it revenge or not, a homecoming. Let's call it a homecoming for him in that one. Sorry you ever went to the Metrodome, but you did see your team win a Super Bowl, which I can't even imagine what that's like. I was living downtown at the time, downtown Minneapolis, and it was a blast to see a city hosting then, but it was orders of magnitude different than when we hosted in 2018 for the Vikings Super Bowl. Then it was, the Super Bowl had changed into such a much bigger production around it by then. Stadium is fantastic. I think it's the best indoor stadium in the NFL. It's all glass. It looks and feels like an outdoor game while you're there, and they can open up the west side of the stadium. They can pivot the walls, the glass walls, to open up and let fresh air in. It's really cool. It's really cool.
Yeah, you don't want fresh air this time of year, but certainly in the early portion of the schedule, when the following year, I think I've shared with you, I haven't always been in this particular business, sports broadcasting. Byerly's, you're familiar with Byerly's, a supermarket chain in Minneapolis. They were a client of mine. We happened to have been there for a meeting. My wife and I worked together. We were not married at the time. We were dating, and she grew up in Minnetonka. So we stayed for the weekend. We went to the game. We actually drove into her old neighborhood, and the neighbors that were her neighbors when she was a kid, they still lived in the house. We ended up having dinner with them, and he made his own wine, Charch. I don't think I've ever been sicker in my life than that night and the following morning. Fortunately, that was the Saturday morning. The game was on Sunday. But, the Metrodome was a bit of a dump, but I've heard the new place is amazing. Amazing.
It is amazing. I'm glad you were there for a Minnesota winter, which is unique. It's a unique experience. The Super Bowl will never come back to Minnesota unless they build another new stadium, which I don't think they're going to do anytime soon, because people generally don't want to go to a Super Bowl where it could be -10, and that's just course of business. And that, by the way, that's about the temperature now. It's cold in Minnesota at the moment, so
it's cold here. It's cold here. We're supposed to get a little bit of snow tomorrow, which is kind of early for us. But let me just mention that I've been to several Super Bowls. This one, I was not in the business. I went as a fan in the January 92 Super Bowl 26. And it was one of the best Super Bowls I've ever been to. Now, my team was playing in it, and certainly that, changes the feeling. But it was cold. It snowed almost every single day, Thursday through Sunday. They had that St. Paul Winter Festival that was going on. And the league just did a phenomenal job, I thought, all week long. The transportation, look, you guys are used to it. So it wasn't like transportation was a difficult thing. The roads would be cleared. I loved that Super Bowl, even though it was brutally cold and snowy.
How did you get tickets then? If you weren't working,
we were season ticket holders at RFK.
Okay.
And we got into the lottery, and we actually got tickets.
Wow. That's lucky. That was lucky. Holy cow. That's that. And who knows that? Who would have known then that you'd have the career that you'd have now, and you'd be able to talk about going to a Redskins?
Well, forget about that. Who would have thought then that it would be 33 years until they reached another NFC Championship game? Because it really was
a river. Come on, I'm the one guy. You can't complain. I mean, 33 years is nothing. We would take that.
Yeah, but you didn't have Dan Snyder owning your team for a quarter of a century. So,
well, okay, you kind of got me there.
That might be the mic drop there. Tell me about the Vikings. Obviously, they're struggling. Max Brosmer was not the answer. Certainly not against that Seattle defense. What will Washington see Sunday?
Well, you'll see J.J. McCarthy. Here's the best stat I can give you for the last 2 games of Vikings quarterbacking. J.J. McCarthy 2 weeks ago. Max Brosmer last week. Quarterback ratings under 30. They would have had a higher passer rating had each of those quarterbacks simply spiked the ball every play.
It was that bad.
Games,
yeah.
2 straight games, you'd have been better off spiking the ball than potentially throwing a pass. It is the quarterbacking here is so bad. We are in a darker spot as Vikings fans than we have been in my lifetime. It really looks like J.J. McCarthy is not going to pan out. And we've talked about it a little bit on past Thursday, but it appears, Kevin, that he just doesn't have an NFL tool set. The processing is too slow. The accuracy is not good. There just aren't things to expand upon with J.J. McCarthy that make you go, there's this thing that's really good, but we can get better here. We're not seeing that. Max Brosmer was obviously way over his head. And then the Seattle defense can humble good quarterbacks, but what they did to him was potentially career ending. I mean, I don't know how you come back from what happened to poor Max Brosmer last week. So now I think what you're going to see here this week in your game is a concerted effort to keep Justin Jefferson happy for much of the rest of the season. 2 things. I mean, right now there's a lot of panic as this organization is almost certainly going to do some form of reboot in this offseason. It's an old roster. They're way over the cap the next 2 years. They've drafted horribly. They don't have a quarterback that looks requisite of the NFL level anywhere on roster, despite the fact that they had 2 on roster at this time last year. And then they got to try to figure out what they're going to do with Justin Jefferson. He's in his prime. He's 26 years old. He's a great receiver, languishing, and he's obviously very frustrated with his role in the offense and how things are going. So I believe the team and the organization is going to try to mollify Justin Jefferson through sheer repetition and volume by just pelting him with targets. And if worst case scenario is you build up some trade value for him by reminding people that he can be a game-changing wide receiver. And, best case scenario, your team's better because Justin Jefferson's got the ball in his hands a lot.
Well, let me ask you, you made the comment that there's going to be big change coming. I mean, the idea from afar of trading Justin Jefferson is insane to me. But beyond that, is Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, the GM, who's not done a good job there, is he in trouble? Is Kevin O'Connell in trouble?
90% chance Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, the general manager, is gone at the end of this year. His drafts have been the worst drafts over his 4 years. The worst draft. I mean, it might be the worst 4 years of drafting ever in the history of the league. This team has almost no starters coming out of 4 years of drafting. He's almost certainly gone. Kevin O'Connell, I think, has earned himself. He's the reigning coach of the year. I think he's earned himself some latitude here, but oftentimes if you want to get the GM you want, that general manager wants his own coach, wants to handpick his coach, or maybe her coach. We'll find out. There's a scenario.
What do you mean her coach? Is there a female general manager candidate out there?
There is with the Eagles. I forget her name. They've interviewed her for other roles. The Eagles have got a female in a position of prominence whose name I don't remember that could be a candidate.
Okay.
So the long and short of this story is big change coming, and it won't. I think it's going to be a massive house cleaning that only Kevin O'Connell may end up surviving for the Vikings in this offseason.
I mean, imagine Kevin O'Connell's available. That just doesn't make any sense to me. I've read a little bit here recently. It certainly sounds like he was very lukewarm on J.J. McCarthy. We know that he wanted Kirk back, when they dealt Kirk, and Kwesi wanted to move on, didn't want to guarantee what Kirk wanted guaranteed. Then, So I think it seems like from afar, it's an easy answer to fire the GM in this case. Because the question is, what if they do that? Is that it for J.J. McCarthy? Does Kevin O'Connell say, I know he's only started 9 or 10 games, and it's really hard to tell, but I know quarterbacks, and he can't do it?
I can't imagine that scenario right now. And J.J. McCarthy almost certainly plays the rest of this year so they can extract
if he stays healthy, which has been impossible.
Yeah, that's another problem as well, right? So, he's missed more games than he's played by a lot through his 2-year career. If he stays healthy, he'll finish out this year because you want to know with absolute certainty, or as much as you can, whether or not J.J. McCarthy has any future in this league. But unless there's a massive reversal, you can't possibly go into next year with J.J. McCarthy as the starting quarterback. I mean, your fan base, complete revolt at that point if we're going to have to be subjected to another year of this.
Yeah.
Can't happen. So, the Hail Mary that Viking fans are clinging to right now, and one problem is they're not going to draft high enough. They got 4 wins right now. They probably won't get any more, but they're going to be sitting at like position 8 or so in the draft. That probably puts you out of range to go get a quarterback or land one at 8 that helps you. This is how they ended up with J.J. McCarthy, who's sitting at 10 and trying to draft a quarterback.
Well, they traded up to 10.
they had to trade up 1 spot to 10 to get there, or 2 spots up to 10. I don't think there's a scenario J.J. McCarthy is the guy. They want to bring Daniel Jones back. Jones is going to be a free agent, and they're hoping. Viking fans now are hoping it's come to this in Minnesota. They're desperate for Daniel Jones to be their starting quarterback, and hoping that his experience in half a season here was so good, and he loves Kevin O'Connell so much that he'll turn his back on the Colts and come back to Minnesota.
You know who might be available, and he's played pretty well the last 2 weeks?
Kirk Cousins.
Yeah. I mean, he's looked like Kirk again. He was injured at the end of last year. He had 3 balls dropped on the final drive. It always happens to him. It's the fumbled punt at the 2-yard line. I'm the excuse maker for him, but they're legitimate. But he's looked sharp without, any receivers because Drake London's been out. Now, they played the Saints and the Jets. They played the Seahawks this week. We'll see what happens. So real quickly on the matchup, Washington's defense until Quinn took over was next to Cincinnati was the worst in the league. I still am not sure exactly what it is, Charch, because they faced Miami and Denver's offense isn't that great. And they gave up a lot of yards against both teams.
They did.
Minnesota can run the football offensively. That worries me. And Washington has struggled to stop the run until Sunday night. So do you think that is the way? I mean, they faced a lot of good defensive teams like Washington has during this stretch. They're getting a bad defensive team on Sunday. How do you see Minnesota attacking Washington defensively? Jefferson.
Yeah. Well, I think there will be a lot of Jefferson in this game. The running game should be an emphasis because, to your point, your team's been crushed by opposing teams that just make it a point to run the ball. This is how Devon Achane ends up with 120 yards, and how the Lions runners top 200 yards. It was through methodical running. But Kevin O'Connell won't do that. He just refuses to run, even in obvious running situations. And with a flailing quarterback, he just can't commit to the run. Aaron Jones may not play in this game. In fact, I don't think he will. I think it's 60-40. He does not play. He's got a shoulder injury that he keeps re-injuring, and that brings him down to Jordan Mason. And while Mason is a good back, Jones has been the better back. I don't think this team's going to. It has it in itself to just pound the ball 20 times on the ground because this coaching staff just isn't oriented to plays that way. They're committed to taking their downfield shots, and it worked when you had confident quarterbacking. It hasn't worked this year.
Defensively, I've talked about it all week. Brian Flores is creative. He's aggressive. Mm-hmm. They've got players, too, defensively. It seems like Washington just keeps playing one great defense after another, and I think Minnesota has as well recently. So tell me about the Minnesota defense right now heading into this game.
They're seeing the heaviest run rate in the NFL. Vikings are So, if your team continues on that track, this could be a big Chris Rodriguez game. And I love that Chris Rodriguez has found his way to the top of the depth chart. And while, part of it is just because of the failings of Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, other parts of it is just Chris Rodriguez is a good player. I love watching him play. And I think you're going to see plenty of him and, the rotation of backs and that part to me, as you and I talked in the preseason, I was a Rodriguez guy then. Early on, I looked like a moron because Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt was running well at the very beginning of the season, but I think they ultimately found the right guy. What's interesting about the Flores defense is this, and you can tell me where Marcus Mariota falls into this. Basically, you can draw a line right down the middle of the season. When Brian Flores plays inexperienced quarterbacks, all of the exotic pre-snap looks that he gives and all of the things that he does to try to confound an opposing quarterback work great. Inexperienced quarterbacks just get killed by Flores. Meanwhile, experienced quarterbacks who have seen all this stuff before, know what to do, tend to beat this defense and through the air. And Marcus Mariota is an 11-year vet. By the way, are we on Mariota or are we still?
I'm not involved in that drama. I guess he was asked about it yesterday. I don't get what Collinsworth and Tirico were doing. It almost seemed maybe like a bit. I actually didn't even catch it during it. I don't always pay attention to the announcers, but here's the thing. They've got good personnel defensively too. By the way, it may not be Mariota. It might be Jaden Daniels Sunday. We'll find that out tomorrow.
Do you want that? Is that something
yes, I do.
You want to see right now?
100% want to see it. Yeah.
I mean, because
second-year quarterback, 5 games left.
Yeah.
He's only played 5 games. He's played 5.5 games. He's got to play. I want to see him play. They're getting healthier for the first time this year on offense.
Mm-hmm.
Terry's back. This guy, Treylon Burks, he might be a candidate to get signed here in the offseason. And Noah Brown will be back this week. So, yes, I want to see what we've missed basically for 12 games, being, among the unhealthiest teams in terms of their major contributors in the league. I want to see it.
All right, but if Jaden Daniels is at 75%,
no,
or 80%,
no, 100% has to be right. Has to be 100%. Right. Yeah,
exactly, and that's what worries me about this game is: are you going to look what the Ravens are doing with Lamar Jackson? Right, so they're playing him on ankle, foot, knee, and the same hamstring injury that still hasn't fully healed, but knocked him out for a month. All of that, and Lamar Jackson's a shell of his normal self.
He has been, no doubt.
He's managed 1 touchdown in a month. One. And, the running is totally dried up. If Jaden Daniels is 100%, I want him on the field. If he's not close to 100%, then I don't want to.
We're in agreement. No doubt.
Okay.
We are in agreement. Nobody wants him. Look, a lot of our fans don't want him to play, period. I don't get that personally, not with 5 games left. If there was a game or 2 left, that's a different conversation. With nearly a third of the season left, he's playing if he's ready to go. And the good news is, for the first time since the opener, he'll have, offensively anyway, a supporting cast that's professional. And so that'll be nice to watch. But what I was going to say just about Minnesota, like I mean, Dallas Turner, Van Ginkel, Hargrave. By the way, how has Jonathan Allen played for Minnesota this year?
Well, badly. He has not lived anywhere. Not lived up to the contract whatsoever, and he will probably not be on this team next year.
Interesting. But there's talent on that defense. Greenard from, Houston, when you got him last year.
He's great.
Am I wrong? I mean, this team's talented defensively.
Yes and no. I mean, there are definitely bright spots. Most of it is around the pass rush. Jonathan Greenard is fantastic. Andrew Van Ginkel's very good. They've got a last year's first-round rookie, Dallas Turner, is starting to finally do a little something, but not a ton. And so, Isaiah Rodgers is sometimes the best cornerback in the league, and sometimes the worst cornerback in the league. So if you get the good game, he's way undersized, and so that's part of it. I don't know, maybe if you can get a Treylon Burks on him, Burks can use the leaping and the size differential. Maybe that could be helpful. But Yeah, it's really hit and miss. It's an aging defense that still has some good players, but not a ton of them, unfortunately. Hey, can we go back to just the quarterback thing for 1 second? I want to remind you, because I think this is the sort of thing you'll appreciate. Let's go back to 2011. Vikings versus Redskins on December 24th.
Adrian
Christmas
Peterson.
Eve. This is a game that is going to shape the outcome of Andrew Luck's career, because the Vikings were a 2-win operation going into the second to last game and in position to get Andrew Luck, to suck for Luck. And they went to Washington and morons won the game. What were they thinking doing that? And found themselves out of the Andrew Luck sweepstakes. Luck goes to the Colts. Ryan Grigson, the GM at the time, never builds an offensive line around him and then pounds the love of the game out of Andrew Luck.
But wasn't this the game that Adrian Peterson also got hurt?
Yes, that I believe you're exactly right. This was the season ender.
That's my memory. When you brought up that game, it was Christmas Eve, I'm pretty sure, and Adrian Peterson got seriously hurt in that game.
Well, he tore his ACL in that game.
Yeah,
and then he, at the time, nobody came back from an ACL, and still to this day, people generally never come back from an ACL so fast. You can have a December 24th ACL tear. And then come back and play week 1 the next season.
Right.
I mean, that is not in any way normal. But that is what happened. Toby Gerhart took over halfway through the game, put up 109 yards after the injury in that game.
The Stanford kid, Toby Gerhart. Wow. All right. What do we need to know fantasy football wise for the weekend? I mean, this is a hell of a game tonight. Dallas and Detroit. So, there's so many meaningful games. I kind of went through them just over the next few weeks with this wild season we're in the midst of. But tell me tell our listeners what to look for and what to think about tonight.
You're going to see a ton of passing tonight. These are two shockingly competent run defenses. Detroit arguably has turned into the best run defense in the league over the past month or two. Even where the Patriots and Browns have been great all year, they're playing at that level. And then since the Quinnen Williams trade, the Cowboys have turned into a great run defense over the last month as well.
Yeah.
And so and both defenses and both secondaries just getting killed. This is, everything says this should be just a shootout with both quarterbacks throwing their arm out of socket. Now, Goff has the disadvantage of missing a bunch of key players from the passing attack here, right? So no Sam Laporta, no Khalif Raymond. Amon-Ra St. Brown, very unlikely to go. They haven't made it official yet, but I believe that will happen here. Yeah,
they need him.
So you're going to see Jamison Williams and watch Isaac TeSlaa.
He caught a touchdown pass on Thanksgiving Day, right?
Yes, all he does is catch touchdown passes.
Okay,
he is the new Chris Carter, and he is going to be on the field virtually every snap, and this could be the Isaac TeSlaa breakout game, the rookie receiver for the Lions, and he is fantasy startable tonight.
All right. I mean, there's so many good games this weekend. Give me one other thing real quickly for the weekend that people should know and think about.
Yeah, I think it might be this. If you're not tracking Alec Pierce, the Indianapolis wide receiver,
he's good.
He has emerged.
He's a free agent,
a really good player. I know. How about that? Heading to free agency, and he's turned into the go-to receiver for the Colts, passing Michael Pittman. And, when Adonai Mitchell got traded to the Jets in that Sauce Gardner trade, it freed up a bunch of routes and snaps for Pierce, and he's just been fantastic. And the Colts get the Jaguars this weekend. That's a bad secondary. And this is a win and you're in fantasy weekend. With the playoffs coming, and then they get the Jaguars again in fantasy championship week 17. Alec Pierce could be a league winner.
Talk to you next week. Enjoy the football this weekend. Appreciate it.
Thanks, my man. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Paul Charchian, everybody, at Paul Charchian on X on Twitter. When we come back, we'll update Washington's practice situation and tell you about a player that has asked for and gotten his release We'll talk some Virginia football next, too. The Cavs, the Who's, are in the ACC championship game Saturday night in Charlotte. That's next. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. The Skins gave Darnell Savage a requested release from the team. He was inactive with Will Harris back last week. So Darnell Savage, who actually played okay in a game or two, picked up off the street. Now that Will Harris is back, they can move on from Darnell Savage, by the way, ex-Terp, and he'll have a chance to catch on with a contender. But Washington has given him his requested release today. Saturday night in the ACC championship game, Virginia, who was picked preseason to finish 14th in the ACC out of 18 teams, they ended up being the regular season champion with a 7-1 overall record, 10-2 overall. They'll face in the ACC championship game on Saturday night Duke, the team out of the teams that were tied for second that the ACC did not want to see win those tiebreakers to face Virginia. Virginia beat Duke a few weeks ago handily in Durham, 34-17. But UVA under Tony Elliott, given what they were predicted to be, they had not had a winning season heading into this year under Tony Elliott, and they finished first in the ACC, and they've got a chance with a win to be one of the 12 teams in the college football playoff. Joining us right now is Mike Barber. Mike covers UVA sports for Charlottesville right now, Seville right now. You can follow Mike on X on Twitter @still Mike Barber. I've kind of followed Virginia's season from afar. At what point during this season, Mike, did you think, this isn't just, a team that's winning games? It might actually be a good football team.
Yeah, it's funny to say this because they ended up not being any good anyway. But the night they beat Florida State in double overtime, I think there were some things you saw offensively that felt really legit. Like, look, they put up 700 yards of total offense, a school record against William and Mary. But nobody knew what to make of it, right? Because it was William and Mary, and you're supposed to win that game handily. And again, I know Florida State didn't end up being anything special this year, but I thought that night you really saw that the offense could do everything. And you thought, man, if the defense can just get itself in gear, this team could have a special season.
Yeah, that's so interesting because I remember early in the season, before that Florida State game, saying, you know what? Virginia can score. They played that early season game, which turned out not to be a conference game. I can't figure that out. You have the answer to it. They played NC State, Virginia did, early in the season, week 2, I think it was, and yet it wasn't a conference game. Real quickly, how did that happen?
Yeah, it shouldn't happen. It's all because of the mess of expansion and realignment. But what happened was the ACC wanted their teams to play more power conference opponents, and North Carolina State needed another game. They couldn't find one that wasn't in FCS or a group of 6. So they said, hey, we'll play each other. It won't be part of the ACC standings. It won't be one of our 8 conference games this year, but we'll play each other and we'll be able to say, look, one of our non-conference games was against a power conference team. It was stupid. It was weird. The conference office doesn't like it. They don't like non-conference conference matchups.
Yeah.
They've told me that. So it was just an aberration. It made sense in terms of filling out the schedule, but it becomes unsightly and confusing when you start breaking things down.
You're probably not old enough to remember this. I don't know, maybe you are, but I'm an ACC guy. I'm a Maryland guy, and way back in the day, Carolina, Duke, Wake, and NC State played early in the season in basketball in a 2-day tournament, but they were not conference games. And I forget what they called it, the Big Four or something like that. Played it in Greensboro or played it in Charlotte, I forget. But they would play these 2 extra games that were not counted as conference games. They did away with it, I think, in the 80s, but it was like a pretty big deal up until that point. By the way, real quickly, let me digress. We'll come back to Virginia football in a moment. Virginia basketball, they beat Texas in the ACC SEC Challenge last night in Austin. Are they any good this year? I didn't know what to expect of Virginia basketball-wise this year. They play Maryland 2 weeks from Saturday in Charlottesville. Is Virginia good in basketball this year or not? That's not a bad win last night.
Yeah, I think they're the real deal. When I say that, I think top 5 in the ACC. I don't think they're up with Louisville, Duke, Carolina, but I think they're in that next tier where you've got them, you've got NC State, a couple other teams maybe, depending on who you believe in at this point. They're really good. They're deep. They have more depth than we're used to. They're scoring the ball. They're averaging over 80 points a game. That's obviously a big change from what Virginia's been for so many years.
Right.
They have a different kind of defensive focus. They've got a full court press, but it's not designed to turn you over. It basically is just designed to make you work the ball up the court and waste a bunch of the shot clock back in your end of things. So the short answer is, yeah, I think they're going to be really good this year.
I mean, there's got to be legit excitement over Ryan Odom, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think because of a lot of things, certainly Ryan's pedigree, certainly his ties to UVA, but just what he's done everywhere, right? Everywhere he goes, he rebuilds the roster in his image, and then he goes to the NCAA tournament. So I think people thought that was a legitimate goal for year one. I personally thought, maybe it takes 2 years. It's taken him 2 years at other places, but the guys he was able to bring in really fit what Ryan Odom basketball is. And if they stay healthy, I think this team can absolutely be an NCAA tournament team this year.
All right, let's go back to football. Tony Elliott doing a great job, but correct me if I'm wrong, this is all about the quarterback this year. Agree or disagree, Chandler Morris?
It's a lot about it. This is what I would say. The whole roster needed to be overhauled. They brought in 50 new guys, 30 from the transfer portal. But to your point, if Chandler Morris is a bust, you and I aren't talking about this right now. I'm not going to Charlotte this weekend. They're probably not going to a bowl game. He was the central piece. Look, Jamari Taylor, the running back, is part of what makes the offense go. They've rebuilt the offensive line, something that's been a disaster. The defensive ends and pass rush are all transfers. So there's a lot that had to happen to make them really good. But if Chandler Morris doesn't pan out at quarterback, none of this happens.
So tell everybody that the people that have not seen UVA this year a lot, what makes Chandler Morris so good at quarterback?
Yeah, I think he's just a really experienced player who knows what he can do. He doesn't do a lot of stupid things. Look, there's one throw he wants back. It's probably the one that cost him the game against NC State. He threw a pick when they were driving for the game-winning touchdown, threw a pick in the end zone when he didn't have to force it. Other than that, the guy doesn't really make mistakes. He's rugged. He's been banged up. He hurt his shoulder, got a concussion, but he shows up every Saturday and plays. He's able to run the ball. He's not, Lamar Jackson. He's not Bryce Perkins, but he picks up yards with his legs. He keeps plays alive. He's just a really good, polished quarterback. He understands the offense. He knows where to go with the football. He's just been so steady, and that hasn't always been the case at Virginia at that position.
In following them a little bit, especially as a bettor, and I'll tell you right now, one of the largest wagers I made all season was Wake. They were getting a short number. It seemed weird. And that's the game they lost on November 8th. But part of it was that they had barely beaten a bad Washington State team who actually almost knocked off Ole Miss the week before. They barely beat Carolina. Virginia had 3 overtime games this year, people. Won all 3 of them, including against North Carolina in Chapel Hill. The Cal game was much closer than the score indicated. There was a pick 6 there at the end, although Cal turned out to be pretty decent. But, so I up until the Duke game, I wasn't sure about Virginia. Like, I thought they might lose at Duke, and that was maybe their most impressive performance of the year. And then they backed it up, beating Virginia Tech last weekend. Are they playing their best football right now?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair to say. Look, they were great offensively when the year started, and then they kind of went in the tank, and people kind of figured out what they were doing. And all of a sudden you thought, well, if their offense isn't great, what are they going to do? And the defense carried them for the next 5 games. And I think the last 2 games, you're absolutely right. I think both sides of the ball have put it together. I mean, Duke, talk about the final score, but Duke only scored 1 offensive touchdown, and it came in the 4th quarter. I mean, they dominated that game.
Yeah.
They dominated Virginia Tech, a bad Virginia Tech team, but they dominated them from start to finish. I think right now the defense has proven it is championship level good, and the offense has gotten back in gear. Look, I think it's going to be a tough road to hoe if they beat Duke to win a game in the college football playoff. I think they've got a chance if they're paired with Oklahoma, maybe a chance paired with Ole Miss. If Ole Miss gets a little out of sorts with the coaching change, they're going to be a big underdog if they're in the college football playoff. But I think Virginia has proven to be a really good football team. There was a lot of talk going in, and even as they went through this year, that part of it was a manageable schedule, right? They didn't play Miami. They didn't play SMU. They didn't play Georgia Tech. They didn't play Clemson. And that's certainly a big part of how good the record looks. But I think this team is sneaky good and, will give somebody more than they're bargaining for likely if they make it to the college football playoffs.
Do you agree that the ACC really screwed up by not having tiebreakers sort of fall on the highest ranked team, which would have been Miami, winning that second place tie with this? You just mentioned it. These large conferences now, they all play truly unbalanced schedules. UVA avoided, SMU avoided some of the better teams, including Miami. Would you have preferred? I mean, Duke's not going to be easy. Virginia's a very short favorite against Duke on Saturday night, but conference-wise, it would have been better to have Miami in there, right?
Oh, yeah. And with all due respect to Jim Phillips, to Manny Diaz, I heard everything they've said. There's no chance that even with a win, Duke goes to, they got 5 losses. Like, that's just not feasible. If you're the ACC, you needed this game to be Virginia SMU, and then SMU went and screwed the pooch, and all of a sudden they lose to Cal, they're out of it. Well, then there's got to be a tiebreaker that puts your best team in, and your best team, again, apologies to Virginia and everybody, your best team is Miami. So the fact that it's not Virginia SMU or Virginia Miami really puts the ACC in a dangerous spot. If Duke upsets Virginia, I think there's a really strong case for James Madison to go and have 2 group of 5 teams and nobody from the ACC. And that's not the way it's designed, and that's certainly not the way the ACC wants it. And I don't know if it's their fault for not seeing this coming, but I've been around the ACC long enough to know you're going to have chaos. You're going to have a mess every year. I think somebody should have seen this coming and said, hey, it's your regular season champion against your next highest rated CFP team if we go to tiebreakers. And instead, here you are with a 5-loss team that I think has no chance, even with a win, to be in the field.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, having spent most of my life and being of ACC DNA, Jim Swafford, just let, Maryland walk, had no idea it was going to happen. They could have kept Maryland in that league with just, a little bit of help in that moment. Turns out Maryland was probably in good shape, in better shape going to the Big Ten anyway. We're talking to Mike Barber. He covers all things UVA sports. So in looking at the bracket, like, what you just laid out, okay, a Duke win, Virginia's out. But if Virginia wins, are they the 11 seed?
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to see what else happens and shakes out. I would think, they are outranking in the rankings right now, North Texas, Tulane, and James Madison. So I would think they'd be the 11 seed. Again, possibly going to Oklahoma, possibly Ole Miss. Maybe Oregon, depending on how the way things shake out here. But yeah, I think that's fair, and I think that's right. I think Virginia's had a great year. It's really special. It's really awesome. Do I think they're on the level of those Big Ten and SEC teams? No, I don't. I think the only team in the conference that can make that argument is Miami, and Miami is Miami. So they're never going to be consistent enough to get that credit. But I think Virginia will be a dangerous opponent in the college football playoff because of how well they're playing right now, but I don't think they match up particularly well with any of the teams we're going to talk about.
Pretty wild. UVA 1 win away from the college football playoffs. So let's finish with this. 34-17 a few weeks ago in Durham. This one for the ACC championship. Look, I think Mensa's a really good quarterback. And Duke at times this year, just so everybody knows, they've lost 5 games, but they can really score too, even though they didn't against Virginia. This has a chance to be a shootout. Give me sort of the keys to a Virginia win and your prediction.
Yeah, I think it starts with pass rush. They sacked Mensa 4 times in the first meeting. They held the running game of Duke to 1.8 yards per carry. It's got to be that again. It's got to be a dominant showing by the defensive line. And then offensively, it's got to be moving the ball and possessing the ball. So it's Jamari Taylor, the running back, a Charlotte native playing at home. I think they've got to do those things. Look, if you go back and watch the video of the first game, Virginia was in a lot of 3rd downs and a lot of 3rd and longs. Now, they converted them. Great for them. I don't think they want to replicate that. So, Yes, it was a dominant performance, but I think Virginia's got to tighten some things up. Tough to beat a team twice, but I think Virginia is that much better than Duke. I think Virginia wins a close one, something in the 24-21 range.
I hope they do. If not, it'll be chaos on Sunday morning. By the way, you mentioned Madison and the idea that if Duke wins and Madison beats Troy, there will be two non-group of fours, two group of five teams in the playoff. And I mentioned the Washington State situation. Washington State in back-to-back weeks nearly knocked off Ole Miss and Oxford, and then UVA and Charlottesville. And then a few weeks ago, they almost beat James Madison in Harrisburg. I mean, Washington State, who knew that they would the three toughest games they had all year, they nearly won all three of them, which would have been wild. They're not even in a conference, although I guess they still call that thing with Oregon State the Pac-12 or whatever's remaining of it. Good luck tomorrow night. Thanks for doing this, Mike.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Mike Barber, everybody, at still Mike Barber on X on Twitter. You'll hear Steve Suter's breakdown of the Denver game when we come back. Steve Suter's on my podcast every Wednesday, breaking down the film from Washington's previous game. They've been more enjoyable to listen to the last couple of weeks, including yesterday. And I started off by asking him just for his big takeaways from the game Sunday night against the Broncos.
Certainly was. I was thoroughly entertained. Got to watch this one on the broadcast, which I don't always get to do. So that was a fun trip. But it was, I probably have some of the main general thoughts that most people do watching the game, and that starts offensively. Just interior guys were awesome, and the offensive line was fantastic throughout the entire game. Really solid up front and running, and especially in pass protection, which allowed Mariota to have a really good game as well. I think the game was called pretty well from an offensive coordinator standpoint too. They played, in rhythm, down in distance, staying ahead of the chains. Kingsbury could switch it up, taking chunks here and there, but mostly just a mid-range team, I would call it, from a game plan calling standpoint. And that happens when your offensive line is playing as well as they were and your quarterback's playing as well as he did mentally. And then you had guys outside making plays. So offensively, had to be a good watch if you're a fan. It was a good watch from me from a film standpoint. A lot of good grades. Nobody really was a standout of not performing well in the game. We'll get into the grades later, but overall, offensively, really good game plan. Defensively, I'm starting to like what I'm seeing defensively. Now, I know it was Miami and then it's the Broncos, not two high-powered offenses, but the Dan Quinn change is noticeable. Again, I know I mentioned that last week into Miami, but it's really noticeable when it's going into week 2 of him calling plays. It's still noticeable. I'm going to take you on a little tour later of some play calls and some third downs that have really stuck out that I want you to be aware of. But defensively, I think they're honing in on who they are and what they should be, and it should be primarily zone defense in the back end. I think you have players that fit that. Sanders still is one. He's obviously more comfortable outside and in zone coverage. Not outside in man, but outside in zone coverage. Now, him and Jonathan aren't getting really tested on the outside in zone, but that's a product of playing zone coverage is when you're switching them up too. So quarterbacks just can't come at you thinking you're in cover 3 all the time. They can't just come at you thinking you're in cover 2 or cover 3 if you're doing a good job switching, which they are. I think going forward, I think this is how you have to build this defense. You have to build off players that play well in the zone, in the secondary, and then you got to find rushers. It looks like to me they want to be the Packers right now defensively. The Packers play primary zone coverage in the secondary, and they rely on a front 4 that get a good pass rush. Washington can't do that right now, but that's what they want to do, and that's what they tried to do this game. And what you saw a lot was checkdowns by Knicks. Check down. And it's because playing good zone coverage in the back, taking away the primary reads, but the no pass rush allows that gap between secondary dropping in their zones and then a check down coming out.
Right.
So when that check down gets hit, then it's an 8 and 12 yard game where if you're getting a little bit of a pass rush, that check down has to happen faster. So then the pass coverage in the back end of the zone isn't as deep. So then you come up and you make a better tackle and it's only a 3 or 4 yard game. So if you can build on this, I think this is a solid foundation moving forward. And it's a shame because you had Armstrong, you had Wise that could have been the answer this year. They could have been providing that pass rush while you're playing zone in the secondary, provided Dan Quinn took over and all those things, right? Those dominoes would have to hit. But I think the foundation is there. I think this is what you should build off of. So it was a really good game defensively. I think, let me take a quick look. Yeah, 1 or 2 guys that didn't grade above par. So that's happened all season. Really, maybe not surprising.
Hasn't happened all season, right?
Yeah, it has not happened. Usually there's plenty that are in the negatives for me from a grade standpoint. That did not happen this game. So overall, awesome game to watch, entertaining. Going down to the overtime was great too. So guys making plays, some didn't make plays, but overall, really good watch.
Would you say that going into the offseason, and there's going to be a lot of conversation about what they need, and the list is going to be long, but I felt kind of this way last year heading into this year that they needed an edge setter and they needed a pass rusher. They needed a game impacting defensive player on the edge. They really didn't get one. They added they added Wise with the hopes that Wise could be an edge setter and they could be much better against the run because they were not a good run stopping team last year. And I think they knew Dorrance Armstrong was coming into his own. He had played well at the end of last year, and obviously he started off very well this year before getting hurt. But even with Armstrong, and Wise is an unrestricted free agent, and he's coming off a serious injury. Do you think that the number one need for this team is just an impactful front four, specifically edge, rusher, and run stopper?
Absolutely. I could get on board with that. I mean, what team doesn't want a dominant pass rusher?
Of course. Yeah.
It makes everything better right on the back end. And I just talked about the gap between when you're playing zone coverage and if you're not getting a pass rush, your secondary is still sinking in their zone. So that check down just gets more yardage because of the space in between those two and the time that's allowed. So if you can add somebody to the other side and assume Armstrong is coming back healthy because he was playing awesome before he went out, one of my favorite linemen on the team for sure. You pair him with Kinlaw, who I think is a really good pass rusher from the inside. You don't see that a lot, but he has pass rush moves. If you add a dominant DN on the other side, then yeah, absolutely take it. I don't see, if you're going to play this style of defense in the back end, and you're going to play zone primarily, are there really game breakers from a secondary standpoint that play zone coverage? I want to say no, right? You leave that to a Patrick Surtain who they just played. Like, that dude's elite in man coverage, and those things are more obvious. And if you're a man coverage team, then you want elite man coverage corners. But if you're a zone team, I think you can find guys that fit into your scheme a lot better. So, yes, if I am utilizing a high draft pick or a big money buy in free agency, then sure, put it up front. Absolutely. I'm on board with that.
Have you watched any of the guys? Have you watched, a guy like Reese at Ohio State or Bain at Miami this year? It's going to be a draft, which is going to be interesting from a quarterback standpoint, but there are some pass rushers. There are some edge guys in the top 10 that look like, high level prospects, and Washington could end up very easily with the top 10 pick.
They certainly could, yeah. And no, first part of that, no, I haven't dialed in on any of the guys coming out as pass rush, so I couldn't comment on whether or not I thought they were worth it or not. Leave that up to your scouts. However, I will say, I think they got this whole season wrong from a defensive standpoint and a schematic standpoint. The Lattimore play, moving Sanders still inside, right now look just like dumb moves if I'm calling spade a spade. They just didn't work. Sanders still is not a man coverage corner. That's clear. Lattimore couldn't handle man coverage, but you were running it. They couldn't handle passing off. So Witt wasn't calling the right defense. They didn't go back to the zone they should have. They had personnel in the wrong place. So they totally screwed the pooch here in the beginning of the season, in my opinion. It shouldn't have worked. Well, it didn't work, and they just let it not work too long before they made the adjustment. And for all the things I say about Sanders still from a man coverage standpoint, getting lost out there in coverage and all the issues we had early on, I'm still not ready to say he's a really good zone corner, but for everything he isn't, I know one thing he isn't, and he's not soft by any means.
Right.
And that's why he can make a good zone corner, because he's willing to come up and tackle that check down. He's willing to stick his nose in when his receiver motions away from him and he gets the pin down because he's got a tight end. He'll get in the box and make a tackle too. So if he can build on that, he looks way better in that role. So he's a tough guy for sure. Find other tough guys that play zone and build off of that. But they got it all wrong in the beginning, and it seems like now they're because of the injuries, like it made them become right. So it's a shame they had to do that to figure that out.
All right, we'll get to your thoughts on Mariota and some of the players, but real quickly on the game, what did you think of the 2-point conversion decision to go for 2 in the win, and then what did you think of the play?
100% go for 2. No questions asked. You're 3-8 or whatever your record is, and you go for the win or you end it. I'm totally on board with that. And the play call was right. It's a good play call. They got the switch they wanted with the man coverage coming from the backside safety, and he just had to run through all the traffic. Never going to get there.
Right.
And I'm not criticizing Mariota on the throw either. He's making a little flat throw, and he puts a mark on it, and the guy jumps up, and it's probably 2 out of 10 times he puts a paw on it, and he just happened to put a paw on it. So nobody's at fault. It's a good play call. I would just almost venture to say, and when I watched it live and watched the replay, I said, oh, geez, even if they completed it, they probably would have got offensive pass interference because I think it was Burks. He blocked the guy.
Yeah,
He
no
ran
doubt.
into him. It was very obvious. So even if you completed it, there's a chance you see a late flag and they pick it up for offensive pass interference.
They didn't flag it, but you're saying that because the play ended so quickly that they didn't throw the flag. But if the play had continued, that maybe they throw the flag.
Might have saw a late one.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't dwell on it too much.
Yeah. The one thing about the 2-point conversion is you let the best player on the field be the free rusher. That was my only issue. I understand that they obviously, they came with everybody and played man coverage on the back end, but that's the best player on the field, Benito, 15. He's the tallest player on the field. He's got the longest arms of anybody on the field. If anybody's going to block or disrupt the pass, it's going to be him, and he was the free rusher.
I get that, but you don't. So the rules are, if you're in this kind of slide protection, you have to take the inside guy. So I went back to the play. If you don't have enough guys to block their guys,
right,
then you leave the furthest guy from the quarterback.
Understood.
And that would be Benito.
And that's the quarterback's guy.
Yeah, that will linebacker is coming. And if Tunsil kicks out on Benito and then this will linebacker is closer to Mariota now, in hindsight, the pass probably gets off. But that's just the rules. You're not going to do that.
Yeah, got it. Yep.
And it disguises better coming from the backside. McNichols on his release, if you think he's going to pass protect to the right, so that defender's thinking he's got him on the right side. And then when he crosses the formation, it's just a different look. So, I really like the design of the play.
Yeah.
If it doesn't get PI offensively, it's an easy walk-in 2-point.
Yeah, there's no doubt Burks lowers the shoulder, and it's Hufanga. It's the safety. It's Hufanga who's got McNichols, and he gets completely, derailed.
He gets blocked. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, no doubt. All right.
It may not have worked.
Steve Suter from my podcast yesterday, he went in depth on Marcus Mariota, who he thought had a great game, despite a couple of questionable throws. And he also did a really nice job of breaking down how Dan Quinn defensively on every third down in the game, basically, or most of the third downs, played zone, but played a different zone and gave a different look on every one of those third downs. He thinks that Quinn has definitely changed the way they are playing defensively, and thinks they should have figured this out, as you heard him say from the very beginning, that their players are better in zone coverage. They don't have the pass rush to make it work consistently, but a guy like Sandra still better in zone coverage on the outside, etc. But interesting thing that he pointed out, the touchdown pass to Terry on 4th and goal, Debo was very close to committing an offensive pass interference, but it wasn't as obvious as the 2-point conversion play, which we really didn't talk a lot about. And he pointed out, if you go back and watch that play, especially on the all-22, Burks just lowers his shoulder and blocks Hufanga, who has McNichols on the play. And he made a good point that, if the ball doesn't get knocked down quickly and it's a conversion to McNichols, they might throw the flag there on Burks because it was so obviously an offensive pass interference penalty. Sometimes they don't call that, though. So we would have had at least another opportunity. And by the way, if Benito doesn't knock the ball down, McNichols scores, but there's an OPI call, Washington then kicks the extra point, and we're 27-27 with 2:47 left in the game. Got a 2-minute timeout. You got a timeout left, so there's still a chance. Although the way Denver went down on the opening drive, that obviously played into the decision to go for 2 in the first place. You didn't want to put your defense back out onto the field. When we come back, I'll let you know if I've got a smell test pick on tonight's Detroit-Dallas game. We'll talk about that game a little bit. And also there's some, quantifiable injury information on the season that is worth sharing. We'll do that after this. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com.
All right. Happy Thursday, everybody. We start off in the National Football League. Mark Andrews was extended by the Baltimore Ravens last night, signing a 3-year, $39.3 million contract extension that keeps him in Baltimore through 2028. The deal also includes $26 million in guaranteed money. Isaiah Likely, at the end of his contract with the Ravens, potentially a free agent. No doubt Washington will have their eyes on the situation unfolding in Baltimore. Some NFL teams, all of the NFL teams, announced their Walter Payton Man of the Year nominees. No surprise, but the Washington Commanders nominate Bobby Wagner for the second year in a row. Plus, last night, the Caps, they get a big win in San Jose by a score of 7-1. Alex Ovechkin and rookie Ryan Leonard, each with 2 goals apiece, making the Caps the first team in NHL history to get multi-goal games from a player 40 or older and a player 20 or younger in the same game. Tonight, Wizards, they take on the Celtics over on 106.7 The Fan. Pregame at 6:45. Tip-off slated for 7 p.m. And Thursday Night Football is right here on the Team 980 between the Cowboys and Lions. Pregame gets going for that one at 7:30. 8:15 is the set time for kickoff. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live every day from 10 to 1. You can catch Denton's office throughout all of football season. Don't forget to hit the like button whenever you do decide to join us. Turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
This from JPO. JPO writes, Kevin, I was at the game on Sunday night, my first of the season, and it was a road game. I thought Josh Harris was going to stop this from happening. I can only imagine what the final 2 home games of the year will be like with Philly and Dallas fans in Landover. Yeah, I don't know. I think, there was an attempt even before Harris bought the team, but maybe it started with Harris to stop, outside fans or opponents' fans from buying up a lot of the tickets, prior to the, seats hitting the aftermarket. I don't know how it all works. I'm not going to lie to you. I know that there are zip code and area code, techniques, prevention techniques that can be used to keep teams from outside the market ordering tickets through the team's website, et cetera. But I don't know that you can stop it once it gets to StubHub or SeatGeek or any of the aftermarket sites. That's my guess. You don't know much about this, do you, Max? You told me you didn't.
Yeah, no, not really. I know that geofences are implemented, but aside from that, I don't think that they've done really anything other than restricting the amount of tickets that hit sites like StubHub and SeatGeek and all of them. But outside of that, I'm not really sure.
Yeah, I don't know how you. By the way, it's not the only place you see this happen, but we got used to it for so long.
Yeah.
And when you're 3-9 or 3-8 going into Sunday night, and it's Thanksgiving weekend, the end of it, and it's 30 degrees and windy and damp and the whole thing, it's not a great recipe for a lot of people that have tickets that are Skins fans to hold on to them. And I know that you could have gotten 50-yard line seats for the game Sunday night in the on StubHub or SeatGeek for not a lot of money. I don't think it was like the $2 or $3 per ticket that we saw, in some of the seasons, but it was less than 100. It was less than 50, I think, in some cases. And I know, and I've heard from a lot of you about what it felt like there Sunday night, that it was, a heavy Bronco presence. You could hear it coming through on television. And it's true. The final 2 home games are against Philadelphia and Dallas. I mean, the Dallas Christmas Day game on Netflix is not going to turn out to be what we had hoped it would be. It could be a very big game for Dallas. And wouldn't it be? I think it would be. I know some of you would like a close loss to the Cowboys, but if the Cowboys are clinging to their playoff lives, I think it would be glorious to knock off the Cowboys on Christmas Day. But it will probably be very much a road game environment, as will the Philadelphia game on Saturday, December 20th. I think that's probably right. Thanks to Nick, Steven, J. Will 01, and others for linking me to Sports Information Solutions and the story they did on how injuries have impacted NFL teams in 2025 so far. The man game data isn't really out there as much as it used to be. I don't know why, but this particular site tracks it. And the story was basically, they counted up games lost due to injury, man games lost, but they took it a step further. And from a qualitative standpoint, they measured which injuries impacted the teams the most. And in Washington's case, and I'll pull up the data here. So basically, Washington isn't, in the top 5 in terms of man games lost. But as they wrote, the Commanders are at the top of this list because of the injuries that they have had. The Jaden Daniels injury-plagued season, Terry McLaurin, Austin Eckler, Will Harris, Dietrich Wise. They didn't even include some of the other players like Dorrance Armstrong, et cetera. But their injuries have been the most impactful. The Bengals also don't have a lot of man games lost, but Joe Burrow being lost to them for the course of the season is, much more impactful than some of the other teams that have high injury rates, but not to meaningful players. The Bengals, Washington, and the Cardinals were all at the top of that list in terms of the most impactful injuries. The Cardinals, no Kyler Murray, no James Conner. There were others as well. But yeah, we knew that. We knew that intuitively, even without all of the data to support it. Now, the 49ers have had a significant number of man games lost and a significant number of key players lost. Brandon Ayuk for basically the season, and then they lost Bosa and Fred Warner on defense, which were big blows. They lost Kittle for a few games. They lost Brock Purdy for games. They lost Ricky Pearsall for games. They have been this year the aberration in terms of losing meaningful players and yet winning more games than losing. And look, I mean, the 49ers last year had the same number of injuries and they finished 6-11. This year, they're fighting through it. They really are. But their schedule has helped. I mean, they have wins over the Saints, the Cardinals, the Falcons, the Giants, the Cardinals again, the Browns. So they've had, they play the Titans next week after their bye this week. They finish with Colts, Bears, Seahawks. So we'll see where it ends up. But man, Kyle does and has been doing a great job this year because their previous injury-plagued seasons derailed those seasons, like last year when they had a ton of injuries and finished 6-11 and far out of the postseason. No smell test pick tonight in what should be such an intriguing game. Detroit's got a lot of injuries. Amon-Ra's the big one, man. You got to have Amon-Ra tonight against Dallas's defense. If they go out there and their top receivers are Jamison Williams and Isaac Tesla, and they don't have Amon-Ra, they don't have Khalif Raymond, they don't have
Sam Laporta, Brock Wright.
Laporta. Look, Jahmyr Gibbs could take the game over. He's capable of it, but Dallas has been better against the run here recently after the acquisition of Quinnen Williams. They've been very good against the run. But to be fair, they have played, they had the Raiders in the mix. They did have the Eagles. The Chiefs, they sometimes get away with the run with a lot of the RPO stuff. They did average, I looked at this the other day, 5.2 yards the Chiefs did per carry in that game. They ran the ball against Dallas. Dallas ended up being really good offensively. I actually kind of lean under in this game. That would be, it's not an official pick. I'll have all of my smell test picks for, by the way, games tomorrow night in college, and then all of the games Saturday and Sunday on tomorrow's show. But I kind of lean under. There's a lot of overaction. It's a high number, 54.5. And if you forced me to play it one way or the other, it seems like there's a lot of Cowboy talk. A lot of people are now all jumping on the Cowboy bandwagon. And look, I think it's a tough matchup for Detroit. They play a lot of man coverage, and Dallas shreds man coverage. It's hard to check Lamb and Pickens in man-to-man defense. And I don't know that Detroit's got the personnel to do it. We'll see. Could be a big game for Gibbs, though. Could be a big game for Gibbs, and I think they need Amon-Ra. Massive game in the NFC. If Detroit loses it, think about what they did to us a few weeks ago, and yet they barely beat the Giants, and they lost to the Eagles, the Packers, and the Vikings during that stretch. All right, back tomorrow, Big Football Friday show. Chris Russell's next. Oh, right? One other thing. IHOP. Don't forget the IHOP value menu where all your breakfast faves are just $6 each every day. Where else can you get a big filling sit-down breakfast for only $6? It's IHOP. Go to your Happy Plates with the $6 IHOP value menu available every day at IHOP, $7 in some locations.